Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Chof Dalet in Sota, as we learn for a refuah shlema for Akiva ben Chaya Rachel. Starts the Mishnah at the bottom of Chof Gimel Beis, the new parak, the fourth parak. Arusa b'shemer siyam lo shosas v'lo notlos ksuba. And Arusa is a girl who's betrothed, of course, halachically, not what we call engagement today, of course, just a real Arusa. We say Arayat Mukudeshes Li Kedas Moshe Yisrael, and he gives her a money or a ring or something of value. We know that Isha Niktas Bekesef Shtar Rabia. We do it usually with Kesef or Shava Kesef. So that's on a rule. Shemer Siyavim is if Ruvain died with no children and his wife Leah is waiting for Shimon to either give her Yibam or Chalitza. And let's say while they were waiting, while in the case of Shemer Siyavim, Shimon gave her Kini and Stira, warned her, he suspected of having adultery with somebody or fooling around with somebody. So he said he gave her Kini and Stira, and the same thing with Arusa. The girl was betrothed to him. He gave her Kini and Stira. So we'll see Kini and Stira does apply. And if he gave her Kini and Stira, and in other words, she went to seclusion and there were Adam to the such effect, she'd be usher to him. However, lo shosas lo nisksiba. They don't drink, because we'll see they're excluded based on a pasuk of tachas isha, as we'll see. Asher tista, why shenemar tista isha tachas isha? Because if his wife goes astray under her husband's authority, so to speak, when she's a husband. Now, in Arusa, she is engaged him, she's betrothed him, and he does acquire her, but she's not totally his wife yet. And the same with Shemer Siyavim certainly is not totally the wife yet. So they don't drink. Lo shosas lo nisksiba. So why is there Kini and Stira? It does apply. Prat le Arusa b'Shemer Siyavim. In other words, that they don't drink because the whole process of drinking and the carbon, etc., is only for Isha, if she is Isha Tachas Isha, a woman under her husband's jurisdiction, excluding Arusa and Shemer Siyavim. So these are now in the case of the Arusa, right? They don't drink. Rashi says she caused herself the problem, right? She doesn't get the ksuba because she was the one who put herself under suspicion by having stira with this fellow, and therefore she loses her ksuba. Now the truth is, does an arusa get a ksuba? That's a whole other discussion. She might get the basic ksuba, the 200, not the extra part, or it depends on the area. In certain places they did give a ksuba to the arusa, but whatever it is, she loses her ksuba if she was a woman under suspicion, if she was a sota. Okay, the Gemara can explain that. And even by a shemer siyavim, even if you say a shemer siyavim, Rashi brings down, if you say a shemer siyavim is not usher to the Yavam. That is to say, if Reuben died and he left a wife Leah with no children, and before Shimon got a chance to Yibam Chalitza, she went and slept with somebody else. So in that case like that, even if you hold that she could still marry the Yavam because she didn't really commit adultery, but he doesn't have to be Miyabim her, right? He doesn't have to be Miyabim, and she caused her own loss of the Ksuba by fooling around, and therefore that was her fault. He doesn't have to marry her, and therefore she doesn't drink, and nor does she collect the ksuba in both cases, because they brought the calamity upon themselves by committing adultery. Those are those two cases. We'll explain more in the Gemara. Then the Mishnah gives other cases that these other women who don't drink, because the whole idea is they're supposed to go back to their husband, and these are cases where the whole marriage was disallowed anyway. For example, Amana Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol is not supposed to say Amana Grusha Chutza Kohen Hedyot. Kohen can't marry Grusha Chalutza. Let's say he married her. We don't hold like a Bekiva. We hold like Kedushin is Chal. And then if he gave her Kini and Stira, so should she drink to go back to him? No, she shouldn't go back to him anyway. So therefore, she doesn't drink. These cases don't drink. Mamzer Sasino Yisrael. Yisrael shouldn't marry a Mamzer or a Nasina, who were the David was gozer on them, that they're like Goyim. Ubas Yisrael Mamzer sin, the same thing in reverse. All these pieces of lo shosef lo nos ksiva. The elu lo shosef lo nos ksiva. The following also do not drink nor get a ksuba. Ha'omeres tmeani, if she admits that she committed adultery. Again, as we said, even though normally Eidachad is except they're talking about themselves, if she's not believed about herself, but over here where there's kid and stira, and there's reason to believe that she did commit adultery. If she says she's tamei, there's no point in drinking. We had the Gemara back on Chaf Amar Aleph, the Rashi said over there, the purpose of Mayim Marim is lo nitnu el lavaris hasafik, to determine, to decide, to adjudicate, not adjudicate, but to decide the suffix. We're a suffix here. We're not sure what did she commit adultery or not. The purpose of the Mayimar is to determine whether she committed it or not, to determine once and for all. But if she admits that she's tamei, there's nothing to talk about. She doesn't drink. So Mer Smani, or Adam said that we saw her in the act. So then there's also no point in drinking. We know she committed adultery. Says she says, I don't want to drink. Now if she says, I don't want to drink, also, okay, you'll leave, you get your get. In a regular case, she's married, you give a get, no ksuba, because she says, I don't want to drink. We're not talking about where she's not drinking out of trembling, where you said that in a case like that, after you mix the water and prepared everything and she's trembling there, we force her to drink because we're just afraid she's afraid. But here where she's determined and defiant and says, I don't want to drink, fine, then don't get your ksuba and just get divorced. Amar Bala Eni Mashko. Now those are cases where she doesn't drink and she doesn't get a ksuba. Let's say the husband says, I don't want to go through the process. It's embarrassing to me. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to give a drink. Or Shabala Bala B'derech, or he himself sinned by sleeping with her subsequent to the Kini and Stira. From the Kini and Stira, she's a Sota. Sota means is a suffix if she committed adultery, and the only way to determine is for her to drink. If he says, I don't want to go through the process, or he himself sinned, because it says it's only if we learn out of a pasuk, as we'll see, that if he himself sinned, he was a bad boy, also the water doesn't work. Shabbat b'derech. So in these cases, he was the problem. If he says, I don't want to give her to drink, or he himself sinned, they get the ksuba below shos. They don't drink, but they get the ksuba because it's his fault, not hers. Mesu balein achalosa. So what happens if the husband died? She doesn't drink unless the husband brings her to drink. And there's no point in determining if she committed adultery, or it wouldn't work anyway if the husband's not here. So Beis Shammai says, no, they get the ksuba. It's not their fault that the husband died. She could have said, had I drunk, I would have found me to be innocent, as I claim, so she gets her ksuba. Beis Hillel says, no, ksuba. You can't have both. Either you're going to drink or you're not the ksuba. And since you can't drink over here because there's no husband, you don't get the ksuba. What about muberes chaver menekasver? What about in a case where she was married first to number one, and she was pregnant with him, and he divorced her. He died. And now she married number two, and number two gave her kini and stira. So the rabbi said, you're not supposed to marry, if you're pregnant or nursing, you're not supposed to marry for 2 years until the baby's been weaned. And she was over on the chachamim's takana, and she got married anyway. And now the new marriage, the number two, gave her kini and stira. So he says, muberes chaver next chaver lo shosas lo ksuba. It's her fault. Rav Meir says they don't drink and they don't like ksuba. They don't drink because they violated the rabbi's takana, and therefore they don't get the ksuba. No, what's the problem? What he could do is stay away from her. What's the whole reason why you shouldn't get married while you're pregnant or nursing? Because you might get pregnant again from the new husband and kill the other baby, and there'll be nobody. They didn't have milk, or the milk will dry up, and they didn't have Materna or Similac or whatever it's called. And there's a way around it. Don't say she shouldn't drink a lot of ksuba. Let her drink and just don't stay married to the new husband. Take a break for a while. Take a pesach zman. So the rabbi said you can do that. Also, the Mefarshim asked, what do you mean that's only a drabanan anyway, that you can't get married? Midaraisa, she can get married right away, even though she's pregnant from a previous husband. So it's only drabanan. So how could you say that you're going to take it away? The Mefarshim deal with that. Ailonus uskena. And Ailonus uskena v'sheina ruyulet. For whatever reason, they can't have babies. They can't give birth. For example, she's an islandess, a woman who has no womanly characteristics whatsoever, or an older woman, or for whatever reason, lo notlus ksubin v'lo shosas. They don't take the ksuba and they don't drink. His idea is because they're not capable of having children returning to their husband. Rabbi Lezer Omer, that's only if maybe there was a mekach tos. He didn't know that she was an islandess, or he didn't know that she was not capable of having children anymore. But he can be married to somebody happily, even though she can't have children. He takes another wife also to have the children with her. And therefore, she should be entitled to get the ksuba, right? So in these cases, Rashi says, right? Says fine, you can have children with somebody else, and therefore she should be able to get the ksuba and drink. Other women, all other normal women, when you don't have these weird cases, either they drink, they don't want to drink, they don't get the ksuba. Eishes Kohen shows them with her sabala. It's also the Charlie Gemara is going to say, isn't it a double pasha? Let's say she's the wife of a Kohen. So you might say, oh, wife of Kohen knows more chamer, because if she was raped, she's not entitled she can't go back to her husband. Yes, but the whole issue is, did she be with somebody else or not? If she's innocent, then she's totally innocent. She could drink and she'd go back to her husband like any other woman who drank and turned out to be innocent. Eisha Saris. Let's say her husband became emasculated. He became a Saris after they were married. She drinks. All right, she could drink also. Why? Even though he might not be able to have children anymore, that might be the issue over here, right? Right, he was castrated after they got married. So fits into the word. Sure, she may not be able to have children anymore, but they're still married, and if it's there's no reason why she shouldn't be able to drink over here, unless he's a krushafcha, which he has to divorce her anyway. But it just might be a saris. In other words, he wasn't really castrated 100%, or he wasn't a person whose genitals were cut off, and he would have to divorce his wife anyway, so she could drink. Not only can the husband warn her against strangers, not to marry them, not to have bia with them, rather, but even if he says, listen, I don't want you to be secluded with my father or my brother or family members, puts him in a cotton, except for a cotton, because it says ish, right? Misha Enuish, a person or somebody who's not a person. Tomorrow we'll talk about that, like an animal. I don't want you to be secluded with this animal, with this dog or whatever. So there, Kinyan Stira does not apply to a cotton, or if the supposed adulterer, the questionable adulterer, is a child or an animal. The following people, Bezdin does the kinyan for them. Normally the husband has to do the kinyan Stira, right? The following Bezdin does it for him. Mishan is Charish Bala. Let's say her husband became deaf, so he can't hear, therefore, or Nishtato, he became an imbecile. And for somebody, he can't carry through the kinyan Stira. Usually, Charish means he's deaf and dumb. Or he was in jail, and the woman was suspected of adultery, so they gave the bezdin on their behalf the kinyan Stira. Lola Shkosam, it doesn't mean that she could drink. They can't give her to drink because only the husband can do that. She can't through the whole process. If the bezdin forms kinyan Stira on a woman whose husband became incapable of giving her kinyan Stira, either because he became incapacitated and couldn't talk, or he was in jail, they can't give her to drink, but they can, if she does kinyan Stira, once does kinyan Stira, if she doesn't drink, she's not going to get her ksuba. She could drink like she okay, if it's a case where he was in jail, after he comes out of jail and there was kinyan Stira, he can give her to drink. But let's say he became a shota or something and he's not capable of carrying through the whole process, she would just leave her ksuba. In that case like that, he probably can't divorce her either because he's a shota now. He can't, maybe not be capable of understanding what he's doing, but she wouldn't be entitled to a ksuba. So what would you do in a case like that? She's stuck to this nebuch, to this guy. But if let's say he died, maybe she wouldn't get the ksuba. If he died, then that would be enough mina. As long as she's married to him, she's entitled to sustenance. But once he died, she wouldn't be able to get the ksuba in that case. So the Gemara said, let's go back to we had all these different cases here about somebody who's didn't want to drink, he didn't want to drink, she didn't want to drink, a marriage that wasn't proper. Let's say on a Rus and a Shemeres Yavam, where everything was normal. He got engaged to this girl, suspected her, gave her kinyan Stira. So he said, kinyan Stira there is. She loses the ksuba. Shemeres Yavam also, a regular case. Reuven was married to Leah, died with no children, left his wife to Shimon, and before Shimon did Yibum or Chalitza, he gave her kinyan Stira because he suspected her. So he said these places they don't drink because it says Esher Tista Isha Tachas Isha has to be married. Okay, so she doesn't drink. Says the Gemara, Mishtu Losha, she doesn't drink. How can you mekanala, but you do kinui? Why would you do kinui then? If she's not going to finish the process of drinking, why is her kinyan Stira lechatchil? The whole parsha of Sota is he suspects her, he gives her kinyan Stira, and then she drinks, determines whether she's innocent or not. Why would you give kinui if there's no kinyan Stira? I mean, where do you get this idea that you do kinui? Tana Rabbanan, Dabel Bnei Yisrael, pasuk at the beginning of the parsha, Dabel Yisrael v'yamarta aleihem, and you tell them. That extra v'yamarta aleihem is l'rabas harusav sharas yam lekinui. That's where you based on a pasuk. You're right. They're not really married. It's not tachas isha, and therefore she doesn't drink. The whole process wouldn't be completed. But how do you know there's kinyan Stira? Because v'yamarta aleihem includes arusa and a shemeres yavim. So therefore there could be kinyan Stira there, even though she can't carry out and drink. However, she's not entitled to the ksuba. but she can't drink to determine whether she's innocent. If she can't drink, basically what it really means is that the Yavam doesn't have to carry it out. The Arusa, he can't marry her anymore because she's under suspicion. She might have committed adultery and she's a Sota, but he can't drink, so he can never resolve it. The only solution is to either death or divorce. In the case of Shemeres Yavam, if he wants to, he can marry her because we don't hold like Rav Nuna. Rav Nuna said the other day, Shemeres Yavam Shezinsa is usher to her Yavam. We don't hold that way. It's mutter. She's mutter because it's only, we hold it's only, since it's only a lav, it's not like, it doesn't create a mamzer, it's not like karas. And therefore, it's a sin. Indeed, she committed a sin, but she's not also to them if he wants to marry her, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. Now he can give her chalitza. You can give her chalitza in a case like that. As we said, in the case where, let's say the husband died after let's say the first husband, Reuben, did Kinyan Steer, and then he died. So what do? So you do chalitza, not yibam, because she's also, since she committed a real since she's a real sota, meaning a suffix, if she committed adultery under her first husband, the yavam shouldn't marry her, gives her chalitza. In this case, the yavam gave her Kinyan Steer, but she's not, she's still not forbidden to him, even if she committed adultery, because it wasn't real adultery. She wasn't really married at the time. She was only Shemeres Yavam to Shimon. So therefore, if he wants to marry her, you can marry her, but he doesn't have to give her the ksuba. Presumably, if he marries her, he would give her the ksuba. But if she wants to just collect the ksuba now, based on her first husband, without marrying Shimon, and he doesn't want to marry her, he doesn't have to give the ksuba. So the Gemara said, how do we know this? Because how do we know that there is Kinyan Stira on our Rusa and Shemeres Yavam? Dabais from Yamar Taleim. The Rabbos have from Shemeres Yavam. The Kinoi. Umasnisen, but our Mishnah, who says, listen carefully, our Mishnah that says, yes, there is Kinyan Stira, but there is no drinking and no ksuba. Kinyan Stira there is, but there's no drinking, there's no ksuba. Who does that go like? Umasnisen money Rabbi Yosef goes like Rabbi Yosef. Ditanya. Listen carefully. Tachas Sheikh. If you sinned under your husband, right, you went to surround your husband, probably arusa, excluding an arusa. In other words, who's the one who drinks and all these, terrible punishment will happen to her when she drinks? A regular wife, tachasisha, excluding an arusa. Yochashani motzi af shemeres yavam. I may think, well, maybe a shemeres yavam should be also excluded. She doesn't drink. Tamalomer ish. So Rabbi Yoshi says that a shemeres yavam does drink, not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said arusa and shemeres yavam don't drink. Yes, there is Kinyan Steer, but they don't drink. Rav Yoshia says Shemeres Yavam does drink. Only an Arusa is excluded, right? Because it's Tachas Yishech by Arusa. So maybe he'll exclude Shemeres Yavam also, who's not really married to Shimon. No, Ish, even a Yavam also is included. That's so Rav Yoshia is not like our Mishnah. But Rav Yonason is like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah goes like Rav Yonason. Rav Yonason are Tachas Yishech, Prat Shemeres Yavam. That exclude. He says that Tachas Yishech does not exclude Arusa. Excludes Shemeres Yavam, who's very close. She doesn't even need a chuppah. All he has to do is have beer with her. So Tachasi Sheikh brought the Shemeres Yavam, excluding a Shemeres Yavam. A Shemeres Yavam, that's what we want to exclude from drinking. Otzi Shemeres Yavam below Otzi Asarusa. Maybe I won't exclude Arusa. Talmud Lomer, no. Asher Tista Isha Tachas Isha Prat La Arusa to exclude Arusa also. So Asher Tista Isha Tachas Isha that our Mishnah quoted excludes that Arusa. And Tachas Sheikh also excludes Shemeres Yavam. So Rav Yonason holds neither one of them drink, just like our Mishnah. So Rav Yonason is really the author of our Mishnah, or our Mishnah goes like Rav Yonason. One says, listen, Arusa is much more likely to be considered the husband, attached to the husband because it's his own kedushin, and she gets skila if she commits adultery under him. So therefore, Rav Yonason says it's more likely to exclude Shemeres Yavam from drinking, not the Arusa, because Arusa is mamish like her husband, like his wife. She's chayav skila if she committed adultery, and he himself married her. So therefore, he says first exclusion is Shemeres Yavam. Arusa is more likely to be the husband, is like his wife, but still we have a pasuk to exclude her too from drinking. Umar Olim is Shemeres Yavam, whereas Rav Oshia, who says that what does the pasuk exclude? Shemeres Yavam dolo mitzra mesira l'chuppah. He says, listen, if the pasuk is going to exclude one of them from drinking, it's probably the Arusa, right? Maybe exclude the Shemeres Yavam. No, not the Shemeres Yavam, because she's attached to him already. You don't even need chuppah. All you have to do is bia. So that's Rabbi Yoshia's opinion. Says that's what Rashi says. Marlim le'arusa, Rabbi Yonasan chashiv le'arusa isha gemura tfei mishmeres yavam. That's why he first excludes shemeres yavam, because that's less likely to be the wife. Shemeres yavam, so he first exclude that, and then exclude arusa because that's like his wife. He's considered that like his full wife. Therefore, he excludes that first. That's why Rabbi Yonasan excludes shemeres yavam first, because the arusa is really like the wife. It's like his wife. Therefore, he says the first pasuk excludes shemeres yavam. That's more likely to exclude because he didn't really the Yavam didn't really marry her, right? She just fell to him, and therefore that's the first one you're likely to exclude from drinking. But he says also you can exclude arusa. Why? Because it says asher tista isha tachas ishech, that your wife whose wife went astray under her husband's jurisdiction. Okay, so Rav Yonasan, hi ishish ma'avalei. Rav Yonasan said, what? Remember we said, Rav Oshia said, maybe I would exclude a shemeres yavam. Remember, Rav Oshia said that, not like our Mishnah, he says that the shemeres yavam also drinks like a regular wife. Why? Because it says ish to include that too. What does Rav Yonasan do with it? Rav Yonasan says that the shemeres yavam does not drink. So what does he do with ishish ma'avalei? Let me boil the rabos eishes cherish to tell me that even the wife of a cherish, even if he became deaf and dumb, also Shabezin Mekanala, we'll see later on, Bezin gives kin and steer for Eishes Cherish, for Eishes Shota, for Eishes Shim, if she was the wife of a Cherish or a Shota, or a person who was a little mental, he wasn't all there, mixed up, that their Bezin also gives kin there. That's what Ish comes to include. For Rabbi Yoshia, Hai Tachas Isha Ma'avalei. Okay, so Rav Yonasan said Isha Tachas Isha excludes Arusa. Right. And what did he do? What did he exclude? Tachas Ishech excludes Arusa. So what does he do with Asher Tista Isha Tachas Isha? What is that? What is Tachas Isha used for? Ma'avalei boile lahakish Isha Isha ve'Isha lish. To include, we'll see later on a hekish between man and woman and woman and man. In other words, things that exclude a woman also exclude a man. Let's say they were crippled for some reason. Or she has to be able to stand up. If she can't stand up, she's excluded. So the same way that she's excluded, he's also excluded if he can't stand up. The Gemara there in Daf Chav gives different things that, let's say, she was blind, right? She wouldn't drink. The same way if he was blind. So we compare man to woman. That's what Isha Tachas Isha comes to include. There's a hekesh between Isha and Isha. Ela Taima, so the Gemara says, okay, fine. Where are we now? We now that the Mishnah said that Arusa Shemeres Yavam don't drink. That goes like Rav Yonasan says they don't drink, but they do have kini and steer based on the amartol alehem. Okay, so the Gemara now says, Ella, we're at the third line on Amid base. All the time in Ksiv, Hani Kroy, you have these psukim. Arusa Shasi, I would think that Arusa drinks, but there's a different problem with an Arusa drinking. Vokiyasa Ravacha Bar Chanina. Rachamina came in Durama from the south. Also, he brought this price, which says, Mi baladei shech. From this words in the Parsha of Sota in Bamidbar Hay, it says, and this you've slept with this person other than your husband, but somebody other than your husband. Mashma, that we're talking about somebody, your husband was there first, and now you've traded him for somebody else, so to speak, right? This only works if the husband slept with her before the adulterer. Then the whole parsha of Sot applies. In the case of Arusa, normally she's only betrothed him; she hasn't yet slept with her husband. In this case, if she would have kini and stira with this Boel, well, the Boel is going to have bia before the Baal. So that's not the case we're talking about. It said if somebody has had bia with you besides your husband, who already had bia with you once, at least once, then this whole parsha applies. But in the case of Arusa, she hasn't had bia with the Baal yet. So how does that work anyway? So why do I need a pasuk to exclude that Arusa doesn't drink? She wouldn't drink anyway because she didn't have bia with her husband before she had bia with the Baal. Amar Mechama mishkach zukon shabale oros b'veisavia. It's possible. She was, let's say, the husband, the fiance had bia with her in her father's house. So when they got engaged, he had bia with her. He shouldn't have, but he had bia with her. Right? Shabala oris b'veisavia. It's possible. So he did. So that there's a case where she had bia with the husband before the Boel, and therefore you might think that she would apply. She would drink. Kamashma, we have the psukim telling me she doesn't drink. The kavasik of shemeres yavam, but what about shemeres yavam? That's fine. You could say by Arusa, she had bia with him, even though we weren't fully married. She had bia with him before she had bia with the Boel. But by Shemeres Yavam, what are you going to talk about there? If she had bia with the Yavam, going Shabbat Yavam, if the Yavam had bia with her in her father-in-law's house, in other words, she was already married to Reuben, so she's already, like, so to speak, in her father-in-law's house. And then when Reuben died, Shimon had bia with her. Hashemeres Yavam Karsla. It's not a Shemeres Yavam. Ishtamaya, he's mamish Ishtamaya. That's his wife. That's not a Shemeres Yavam. Is that she hasn't had bia yet with Shimon. She had bia with him, and it's his wife. So it's not a case of a Shemeres Yavam. So again, why the Shemeres Yavam? Why would you think that a sota of a Shemeres Yavam, if Shimon gave her before he married her, he was the Yavam, and he gave her kini and stira. And you say over here, she doesn't have to drink, right? She's excluded from drinking based on the pasuk according to Rav Yonasan. Why does she have to drink? She's had bia with the Baal anyway before the Baal, before Shimon, because if she had bia with Shimon, she's the wife. She's not a Shemeres Yavam anymore, right? The Amarav Kana Lakol. If he had bia with her, she's totally his wife. Not only for not only that she's his wife in all senses. In other words, the Gemara in Yevamah says in the 6th parak that she had bia with him even by accident or by misunderstanding or whatever. Anyway, she's caught entirely. That means to say, not only does he take the place of his brother for Yerusha, and he gets the Yerusha, and not only does it Yakam Hashem Machab for those kind of things, but even and that he'd have to give her a get. But it got to be everything. If he's a Kohen, he can give her truma. Yorsha Metamila, and if she dies, he's a full wife, and he would be Metamila Umashka or Potter we get Balochlis and Achlitz anymore. So the point is, if Shimon had bia with her before the Boel, before the alleged adulterer did, then he's a full husband. So he's not a Shemeres Yavam anymore. The answer is Kashmuel the Amar Lo Kana L'Dvar Amor B'Parsha. No, it goes like Shmuel that even if he had bia with her, but he didn't mean to have bia l'shem marriage, right? It's like Shmuel. Shmuel says only Karma Parsha. For example, Shem Achav gets his nachla, gives her a get instead of a chalitza. The other kind of Yavam, Rashi says, "Bebia called to be a vami yavol lenafka the lo ksivi yavami kachena alisha yavam alel lekachalisha bashmina and to be also alel hey lekin lekuchisha shelo hilkach lemidi deit mabach parsha ravina kra." Nisavel aval media achrina lav nasuninu mayom parsha patim chalitza ide yibam yakum hashemach v'yoshan zechasa ve'inacham cholkenimo. But as far as him being a Kohen, that she could eat truma based on him, or that he would be metame to her if he's a Kohen, and a Kohen can only then she's not totally acquired, so she's still considered Shemeres Yavam according to Shmuel. Look at Rav Meir Parsha. If that's the case, if you're saying that Rav Yonasan, who excludes the Shemeres Yavam from drinking, not like Rav Yoshia, Rav Yonasan will only come out like Shmuel. So Lema Rav Damak Rav Yoshia, so say Rav, who says what? That the Shemeres Yavam does drink, holds like Rav Yoshia, who says Shemeres Yavam drinks. And therefore, but why? Because the only way it would work is if Shimon had bia with her, and in that case, Rav who says she's Kana Lakol for everything, he'll go like Rav Yoshia. Rashi says Damar Kana Lakol Rav Yoshia, Damar Shemeres Yavam Shosa Vukim Bola. Okay, what does it mean? Why does she drink? Because she's really married to him. According to Rav, if he had bia with her, again, if the husband didn't have bia before the Boel, the whole thing wouldn't apply anyway, based on Mibal Dei Sheikh. So when does it work? When does it work? If the husband had bia before. If the husband had bia before, she would drink because she's not really Shemeres Yavam. She's mamish married to him. So Lema Rav, who says that it's a full marriage if he had any way, shape, or bia, kind of bia that the Yavam had with her makes her a full husband. So that's why she would drink. He'll go like Rav Yosha. Ushmuel Damar Rav Yonasan. And Shmuel says it's not fully married. We'll go like Rav Yonasan, that the Shemeres Yavam doesn't drink. Even if he had bia with her, he doesn't drink. Amalcha Rav will say, you don't have to say that. You're right. We have machlokas in Rav Yoshia and Rav Yonasan whether a Shemeres Yavam drinks or not. But you don't have to say that Rav goes like Rav Yoshia. You don't have to say that Shmuel goes like Rav Yonasan. Why? Amalcha Rav will say, Ana Adam Me'afil Rav Yonasan. I can even come out like Rav Yonasan, who says that the Shemeres Yavam doesn't drink. Why? Because I say, Rav, that if the Yavam had any way, shape, form of bia with her, she's a full husband. Even if he didn't mean to marry her, he's fully married to her. So how can I come out like Rav Yonasan who says she doesn't drink? The answer is that since you need a pasuk to exclude it, he is the wife. But you know what? Still a pasuk excludes her. She doesn't drink. Even though he had bia with her, she doesn't drink. Ushmuel Amar at the top of Chavei. Shmuel will say the other way too. I can even go like Yosha, who says that the Shemeres Yavam does drink. Midis Rav Kol Arbu, since the pasuk includes him, right? Since the pasuk includes him, if he'd be the husband, if she would be the wife, of course she drinks. But the fact that the pasuk has to include him, why does the pasuk include him? Because it says Dabel b'nei Yisrael v'yamar talem l'rabas arusa v'shemeres yavam for kinui. And what does Rav Oshia say? Rav Oshia says tachas ishech excludes arusa. What about maybe it excludes shemeres yavam too? No, ish includes a shemeres yavam. So since the pasuk says, since you need a pasuk to include the shemeres, why do you include if it's the wife? Mashma, it's not really the wife. So therefore, Rav and Shmuel don't necessarily argue in the sheets of Rav Oshia and of Yosin. But our Mishnah goes like of Yonasan that an arusa and a shemeres yavam, even though they do kini and steer on them, but neither one of them drink based on the psukim that we've had. Rashi also points out here that when Rav says I can come out even like Rav Yonasan, the last two lines of Rashi and Amid Beis, Lav dafka elasmach b'yam v'ikra leishes chevshet. The reason I make ish according to Rav, right? According to Rav, she's mamish married to him. So what do you include from Shemer After Shem ish? The ish is not really to include Shemer because she's mamish fully married to him according to Rav. But rather it's a smachta. But the main pasuk of ish is like we said, according to Rav Yonasan, that ish is to include that even the husband of a cheirish or a shota or a shiamum, also that Bezdin gives him kini and stira, and they would be included in that. That there's kini and stira, Bezdin gives them a kini and stira. Okay, all right, we'll stop here. We'll pick it up tomorrow from Iboilu, the third line on Daf Chaf Hey. Have a good day, everybody. Kol tov b'surot tovot.